When I entered the military, it was I don't know. It was so different from my civilian life. You know, they flew us from Little Rock to San Diego. We sat on benches outside the building all night long, froze to death. Had on Levi's and a T-shirt and I don't know, some kind of a small jacket. Didn't issue clothing until the next day. I don't remember when we got to eat, but we didn't stay at the main center. They put us on buses and took us out to a place called Camp Elliott, which is out in the desert, I don't know, 60, 70 miles from San Diego. And to me, I think it was some kind of a prison camp. They had chain link fence about 8 feet high, and then a concertina wire over the top of that. There was a guard shack, and you didn't get in, you didn't get out without proper papers. We stayed there 6 months, 6 weeks. There was a lot of marching, rifle qualification, learned the 16 count manual of arms with a rifle. I was squad leader and then eventually the recruit chief petty officer, which makes me responsible for a company of between 60 and 70 men. And after 6 weeks, we were rotated back to San Diego, and there was more academics and stuff like that. Learn Navy rigs, and we had guys that had never been in the water, didn't know how to swim, and we can't graduate until everybody swims. My friend from Westville, Carlos Phillips, he was my assistant RCPO, so the two of us ran the company and get everybody up, march them over to the cafeteria to eat in the mornings, come back, clean up their barracks, go out, stand inspection. These in white uniforms, and they are whiter than snow. If there is an infraction of some kind, you lose points. And near the end of our time at San Diego, we had the highest number of points in all of San Diego. I don't know how many thousands of men were there. But there was a theft in the barracks, and I felt responsible for reporting it, not knowing that they were going to take off points because this happened. And anyway, we eventually graduated. And at one point, I think when we first went there, they put us in a big auditorium, and it's like an intelligence test. They test you for if you're mechanically inclined, or I don't know what all the different phases of the test. And if you don't score very high, they put you on board ship. If you score high enough, then other schools or other avenues are available to you. I was sent to combat air crewman training in Whidbey Island, Washington, which was no joy. One of the requirements being to swim a mile. There was only 2 of us that completed it. Another requirement was they pull you up on a very high tower and with a parachute, and you unbuckle part of the harness, and they drop the chute. The chute just blossoms as you go in the water, and you're supposed to throw your arms up and kind of glide out of the harness. Then you swim underwater until you're sure you're clear of the parachute and the shrouds. One of the guys didn't do that properly, and he came up underneath the parachute. We thought he was going to drown before they recovered him. Another one was you ride down a track. It was a chopped off cockpit from an F-4U Corsair fighter plane. And you have on shoulder harness, seatbelt harness, and the canopy is latched. You go in the water, you're in about 6 feet, under about 6 feet of water, and then you undo your harness, undo your seat belts, undo the latches on the canopy, throw it back, and then go out the side and swim far enough away so you know you won't come up underneath the wing. I did all this. It's like swimming and the games and stuff we did when we were kids on Barrenfort Creek. So it was fun to me. But I don't remember many of the other guys doing it. Then we jumped off of a 10-meter platform, which is about 40 feet into the water. Some of the guys were very afraid to do that. Well, we bailed off some of the cliffs on Barrenfort Creek that were at least 15, 20 feet high, so this was a common thing. I learned to fire the police special, the Smith & Wesson .38 pistol, the 1911 model of the military .45 automatic pistol, the old .45 caliber Thompson machine gun, the M1 Garand rifle, the twin .50 caliber machine guns, and the Browning automatic rifle, the BAR, I think they call it M60 rifle, 50 caliber, I believe. That's mostly what I remember of combat air crewman school. Then they sent me to a squadron in Kodiak, Alaska, and I spent the winter there. In about March, the captain called me up and said, well, they tried to recruit me. Said, you know, you can make a life in the Navy. He said you get paid when you're sleeping, you get paid when you're working, free insurance, you know, and you can make a career of this. And then he said, I have an opening to send somebody to aviation school in Norman, Oklahoma. He said, you're the only guy we have in the squadron that's probably qualified to go. So, I was walking several feet off in the air when I left his office. So I went to Norman Aviation School, and during the summer, June through about September, and now the guys that are there are the cream of the crop. If you can't score high enough academically, you're not going anywhere. But this was wartime, 1952. A lot of the guys were reservists, and they were bailed out of college and joined the Navy. We had several that had bachelor's degrees from college, but they were in reserves and went active. So it was very, very challenging. I knew very little about aircraft engines, the mathematics and whatnot. And so I graduated, I think it was 24th out of 214. Then I scored high enough, and only the very, very cream of the crop get to go to aviation electronics school. This is at the Naval Air Technical Training Center outside of Memphis. And again, it's an academic challenge. I knew nothing about electricity and electronics or the equipment used in aircraft, but we studied radar altimeters, UHF, VHF, communications equipment, and CW equipment. And to graduate, you were supposed to be able to send and receive Morse code with a hand key, at least, I think it was 8 words a minute, which is pretty low, because later on I could hit 25 to 30 words a minute on a hand key. We flew simulated bombing missions. I was the radar operator. We theoretically bombed the bridge north of Cairo, Illinois, the Memphis, Arkansas bridge, and the bridge at Vicksburg, Mississippi. And I just love flying. I've always wanted to fly all my life. So from when I graduated, I went to Patrol Squadron 9, VP 9 at Alameda, California. And I was with them in 54, 55, and 56. We deployed back to Kodiak, the guard spot of America. We flew missions out of Kodiak, Adak, Fairbanks, mainly out of those 3 locations. And these were intelligence gathering flights, i.e. spy flights. We crossed into Russian airspace, violated their international boundary, the 12-mile boundary. We did this anywhere from 50 to 100 feet, and these flights were 10 hours, 12 hours. I think the longest was around 14 hours. And most of the time we were under, say 200 feet, 200 or 300 feet. Over the ice, over the Bering Sea, your life expectancy is about 15 minutes if you get in the water. Never worried me. I knew I didn't want to have to ditch, but we got into it with the Russian, we were picked up by Russian MiG-15s on a couple of occasions. Fortunately for the fog and the low altitude, they couldn't make a decent firing pass on us. They lobbed a couple of shells at us. When you see these little flashes on the wings coming at you, you know you're being, they want to kill you. And that was a little unnerving. I was the tail gunner. Well, I was the radar navigator, the electronic countermeasures, specialist, the lead radioman, and the tail gunner, and just depends on the mission, where he wanted me. But when we got in Russian airspace, everybody went to the turrets, 20 millimeter cannons in the nose and the tail, and twin 50 calibers in the top turret. And when pilot gets on the intercom and he says, "Gentlemen, test fire your weapons," that's when the hair comes up on the back of your head and you get a little tense. We were once trailed. We thought the guy was making a firing pass on us, and Commander Dimmitt put the plane in a real hard left turn. The jet's coming in from the side, so you turn into him, and he's going 400 or 500 miles an hour, and you're going maybe 160. Turn into him, and I'm back in the tail turret, and the airplane just started shaking like, oh my God. I wiped off my headset, and I was halfway up the fuselage. I could see the plane breaking up, and I would be the only guy in the back end. And that was very unnerving. The other case we had was 7 MiG-15s were spotted, but we were very low below them. And I don't know that if they ever spotted us and intended to make a pass to shoot us down or not. But we were only a few hundred miles off the coast of Alaska, so they may have backed out and just took a look at us and went on. Scary time. We took off from Kodiak and lost an engine at about 300 feet, the length of a football field. And Commander Dimmitt climbs it out on one engine. We got up to maybe 1,000 feet, declare an emergency, and start coming back. And he made a landing with one engine and left skid marks. Yes, reverse prop on the good engine and apply brakes on the other wheel, and tried to keep it on the concrete. We got off in the gravel a little bit and finally came to a stop. It didn't bother me at all. I just knew that, he's doing his job, I'm doing my job, everybody's doing their job, we're okay. And then I was talking with our flight engineer. He said, the maximum landing weight is 68,000 pounds. Do you realize we were 72,000 pounds? We had 150 gallons of gasoline in the tip tanks. We had just topped off the outboard tanks, the inboard tanks. If there had been a spark, if the wheel had collapsed or the thing caught fire, there would have been one big fireball from the gasoline. But I didn't think about it until later. Anyway, I stayed with them for, another one. We'd been out probably for 12 hours, and we're coming back to Adak. And when you leave Adak with a land-based airplane, you come back regardless if the snow is 10 feet deep, if it's raining, or if the fog is so thick you can't see the nose of the aircraft. You come back to Adak because that's the only place to land unless you want to go in the water. The Air Force operates a GCA shack. Power is down, and about 50 miles out, he said, "Well, Ralph, you need to get me close. It's raining cats and dogs, and you know, when you're flying into the rain, there's a lot more water than if you're standing still. It's like in your car. And I peek around his shoulder and can see nothing. He said, can you get me close? And there's no good radar signature at ADAC to get ranging information from, so I have to do it reverse. There's a volcano behind us. It's called Big Sitkin or Great Sitkin or something, and it's like an inverted cone. Good signature, so I have to calculate how far it is on the map from Great Sitkin to ADAC and give ranging information off of Great Sitkin. We were at about 300 feet or so when we break out of the rain, and I had us lined up with the control tower in the Air Force enlisted men's barracks, and we did a real hard left and a real hard right, and landed. He landed on another runway that I didn't know it was there.